You're listening to Packers Talk Network.
Do you want to experience the thrill of a Packers game at Lambeau Field? If so, be sure to get your game tickets from the longtime trusted source in Wisconsin, Ticket King. Visit their locations in Milwaukee and Green Bay, or just go to their website, theticketking.com. Again, that's theticketking.com.
Packers Therapy.
It's Packers Therapy. It's Chris, and it's Dave, and it's a 4-6 Green Bay Packers team as they tumble once again, this time on the road, in disappointing fashion, to the Washington professional football team. Packers' fourth loss in a row, Dave. And what I'm reminded of, and I think we maybe have done this before on the podcast, what I'm reminded of is that scene in Apollo 13 when they're sitting around after the explosion and they say, we need to evaluate that on the basis of status. And Ed Harris, who's playing Gene Kranz, looks at his staff and says, so what do we got on the spaceship that's good? And I think we've had an explosion on the way to the moon here. 4-6. Things do seem to be bad, maybe not quite as life-threatening as it was for the crew of Apollo 13. But, Dave, what do we have on the spacecraft that's good?
I was going to give Jared Cook some props. He had a lot of yards, and he looked pretty good until he fumbled. Are we going to give him?
I'm going to say now, people have been saying that all day. It's sort of like the old joke, well, other than that, Mrs. Lincoln, what did you think of the play?
Yeah,
I mean,
right.
Yeah, it was. He had a sweet performance right up till they really needed him to hang on to the football, and he lets Josh Norman punch that thing out of his hands.
Do you think
six catches? I mean, it was a good night, but the fumble overshadowed everything, I think.
Do you think they asked that same question to Vice President-elect Pence? That question. Other than that, how would you like to play? Do you know what I'm talking about?
I don't think that. Well, of course I do. It's been all over the news. I don't think that was such a bad, disrespectful thing. I thought Pence handled it well.
Off topic. So what was the question? We were talking about Jared Cook and his. Did he play well? I mean, I thought that.
I'd rather talk about Mike Pence. Wouldn't that be
No.
less of a dumpster fire than what we're seeing out of the Packers right now?
Well, remember how we used to fight early on in the podcast? I think we've both kind of morphed. We're like an old married couple where we start to look alike and. We've started to think alike, I think, with the Packers.
And you know what, Bill? We don't even sleep together any longer.
That's right.
That's how long we've been together.
There's no fun. There's no love anymore.
I know.
All the
passion's gone. We never talk to each other anymore.
Jared Cook. What was the question? Jared Cook?
Jared Cook. Yeah. Well, hey, you should be happy. Packers, between the two tight ends, they had 10 receptions for 133 yards.
And you know what else made me happy was the dump off to James Starks that went for a touchdown. I guess
that was nice.
Well, and the thing is that I think is so crazy is as I watched that play, they talk about, miscommunication, someone left him out there all alone. I think then they scout the Packers. They realize that game after game, season after season, if the running back is in blocking, he usually doesn't go out to pass, and he snuck out he didn't go out immediately. He kind of hung around and then jumped out. And I think that play is there for them for weeks, if not years. And they finally threw it and realized, that's what those linebackers do. They turn their backs, run after the receivers, and double cover way down the field. If you pop out, you've got yardage. Well, there you saw it right there. He had 30 yards to the touchdown. And, maybe next time they'll keep a linebacker and keep it honest. They did try to spy on Aaron Rodgers for a little bit. At least they showed that early. I don't think they started to do that at the end. But, keep some of those guys up toward the line of scrimmage. Maybe those wide receivers will get open a little bit more. But I thought that touchdown to James Starks made me happy of yes, the short pass out of let everyone go deep and throw short. I thought that worked really well. I think Jared Cooks could certainly be a player for them. And it's another example of a free agent. It's so funny how, we talk, he's part of the offense. People are kind of excited. He had a big game. And but he's a free agent. He's one of those guys who is on other teams' trash heap. What do we want to do with those guys? We just want to draft and develop. Well, guess what? He came to our team And I will say, he hasn't helped a ton because he's been hurt all season. But
You're right, exactly.
so that's fair. That's fair. But here's a free agent that did help. I mean, they could use some help, and certainly the last few weeks have been examples of how you can't just rely on young guys to step up when called upon, time and time again. They're not. I don't know if it's fair to say they're just not talented. They have no experience. These guys might be good someday, but I was thinking about it. I didn't have time to do it. Is to go back to the Green Bay Packers draft 3 or 4 years ago and think, hey, who did they draft back then that should be on their A game today? And I don't think it's fair to say, Gunter, why aren't you playing better? Or, Martinez, and these guys are just starting in the league, but we consistently do that, almost to the point where 3 and 4 and 5 year players are no longer with the team. Because all these undrafted free agents make it, and you're kind of recycling these guys who should be stars because our drafts have been, I think, fairly weak. So I don't think the Packers actually played that bad relative to the talent that they had on the field on Sunday. I just think that when you draft and develop, you get a few injuries, that philosophy gets exposed. And so, of everything I would complain about, to me, it's the Ted Thompson story of not having some senior people behind you that could kind of shore up the ranks when things are down. But I'm sure you disagree with me.
Well, not entirely, but what I'm most pleased about is when you were kind of absolving the Packers leadership on Twitter yesterday, and our friend Mike and Ashwaubenon, said, "Well, I'm sure you'll find something to complain about,"
Yeah,
and Mike was right.
Yeah, I did.
Well done. Well
Well,
done.
I will say I haven't complained about Ted Thompson just when they're bad. I've complained about his philosophy when they've been good.
Sure.
On
You
the
just
Super
got
Bowl
to.
season,
Yeah. Keep on
2011.
complaining. You'll eventually be right. Keep on complaining.
No. Well, I suppose you could say that too. But I think in 2010, 2011, I certainly thought they had a very good team and thought things were working. But I never agreed with his philosophy of not kind of completing the roster and just relying on young guys. And I think it's getting worse in the last few years. The team's getting – I don't know the actual numbers to actually prove anything that I say, which is consistent.
It's
for this
truthiness.
podcast. Yeah.
It's truthiness. This is how your people work. It's post-truth. It's the word of the year, post-truth.
Post-truth, yes. It is true because I believe it.
There you go.
But seriously,
You're a guy who lives by data. You're a man who lives by data. Come on.
The guy from Star Trek? No, who are you talking about?
No.
Yeah.
Okay.
Listen. Is this not fair to say that they have their third or fourth year players. They've let guys. They were talking the other day about Devon House and other guys that they've had that would be kind of in that 3 to 4 to 5 year period of time. You probably have to pay up a little bit to keep them.
Right.
Casey Hayward is another. Those
Right,
are two
exactly.
guys that would be playing instead of Rollins and Gunter.
Right.
And they don't have them because they let them go. That they're churning these guys faster. And every year that we have
Wait a second now. Wait a second.
Go ahead.
Just stop right before you leave those two guys.
All right.
When they signed somewhere else, this is the acid test. When they signed somewhere else, were you distraught and saying, "Oh, what are they doing?"
No.
See, that's my point, and neither was I. It's easy now to look back when they have a crisis in the secondary and say, damn it, if they only would have signed House and Hayward, they wouldn't have this problem now. Well, it's easy to say it now, but at the time, they certainly did look expendable. I mean, Hayward had difficulty playing outside. He was strictly a guy who was playing, in that nickel position, kind of, defending the slot receiver. I don't think it's fair to look back under the current circumstances and, try to say, well, they should have known that then. I mean, what? They should have known that Sam Shields was going to have a head like an eggshell and not be able to, play because of a lingering concussion. I mean, yeah, I'm sure they would have made different decisions then had they had the knowledge we have now.
Well, can I make my argument without being specific about House and, say, Hayward? Because my point is that they should have, if the draft to develop works, then you're constantly you have young guys, you've got 3 or 4 year guys who are in their prime, and then you've got kind of older guys who you're just about to let go, and you recycle it through. The 3 to 5 year guys are no longer there. I don't. They have a few stars, but they really have they have very few stars right now, but it seems like their 3, 4, 5-year players are non-existent. It's all
Right.
very, very young.
True. Yeah,
and you've got a few top-heavy stars that they've kept over the years. There's nothing in the middle.
But that's how the NFL works, though, today.
Yeah,
I mean, you re-sign your really good players, the ones that are worth paying. You pay them. Your Jordy Nelsons, your Randall Cobbs, Clay Matthews. I mean, those are the people you re-sign. And then the other ones who are marginal but who aren't worth the money, you let them go, but you have to fill the roster. So you bring in a bunch of young guys, and the best of those you re-sign and you keep them around. They've done the same thing on the offensive line. Mike Daniels is an example of a guy that they decided to keep, the left tackle, Bakhtiari. I mean, that's the way. You re-sign the very best and let the others go. Every team does that, which is why when you start signing free agents, you're signing somebody that other teams have said, not really worth our money. And so that right there, the fact that they've gotten to free agency oftentimes means there's something about them that makes them suspect. Now, you can overpay them their worth, but then that means you're going to have less dollars to sign somebody you might want to sign from your own team. It's the nature of the NFL and the salary cap era.
Well, first of all, I think they have quite a bit of money under the cap. So I don't know if they're maximizing their cap position every single year. Again, I don't have the numbers to prove that out, but I thought that was true. But second,
well, they're not spending up to the limit, but the part of the reason why you don't spend up to the limit is because this offseason, for example, they're going to have a couple of linemen who are coming to free agency. Every year you have more guys coming, so you can't really spend everything you have because every year you're going to have to re-sign some guys. You can't go right up to the limit like that all the time. It just isn't how the system works. It's poor cap management to do otherwise.
But Chris, you're not trying to coast this team into 8-8 every year. That's not the goal.
And they haven't been, Dave. 7 years in a row, they've had winning records. 7 years in a row, they've made the playoffs. They haven't been coasting to 8-8 every year at all.
Well, they're coasting 8-8, and then they have a quarterback that's played at a very high level that's gotten them to 10-6, and then they get out in the playoffs in the first or second round. So that's their specialness.
How many teams? Well, yeah, but how many teams have won more than one Super Bowl in the last 10 years?
Again, you're making me support things with, I don't know, 10 years?
Nobody. The answer
9,
is no.
8.
The answer is nobody.
Oh, what was the question? How many what?
There have been the last 10 years. There's not been a repeat Super Bowl champion.
Repeat. I thought you said how many have won a Super Bowl.
Yeah. I mean, nobody, not even the New England Patriots. I mean, they've been there, but they haven't won.
No,
I in this time period. And so it's like we're looking at the Packers in isolation, like somehow they don't get it and everybody else does. It just isn't true.
Well, I'll tell you what everyone else does.
This is the way the system is supposed to work. This is happening.
Well, then why don't all the other teams do it exactly like the Packers if it works so well? They don't. There's different.
But the results are no better. So what difference does it make?
Well,
but why? If it's all about championships, if you're all pissed off because they go out of the playoffs, before the Super Bowl, I mean, that's pretty much every team does but one. And that one team that wins, there's not been repeat champions in the recent era. That's right. It's the way this works.
It's a competitive business, but everyone tries to do this a way that makes sense. I mean, what else in life do you have a certain philosophy? That's all I do, and I have no plan B. I get the draft and develop could be your emphasis. It can be your plan A. I'm fine with that. But then when it all comes together, somewhere when you have the spring OTAs, you look and see what am I missing? What am I short? This year it was running back. They went into the season with 2 running backs, was it? They had Starks and Lacey, and that was it. And that's the way it played out, and that's the way we're going to run it. We're not going to do anything else with that, and that has cost them. I think every other team does in different degrees, but I would say you can emphasize your scouting department, go after and draft and develop, do that. But at the end, I think you look and say, you know what? We missed. We had our draft is 2 years ago is not developing like we thought we would. We don't have a tight end. We need to go out and get a tight end to balance this offense. They did that this year with Jared Cook, but they don't. That's rare. That's an exception to the rule. And I think, look, they're losing right now. I feel like that times that this was going to come home if the draft is not good year after year, it's going to end up in a losing season like we have now. And they look that talent.
Of course it's going to, Dave. They've been winning for a hell of a long time. You're not going to win every year. You're not. Look, I'll read them off to you. Colts, Giants, Steelers, Saints, Packers, Giants, Ravens, Seahawks, Patriots, Broncos. So there you go. I mean, this is the era that we're living in.
How
This
many
is
of
how
those
this
teams
this how
have?
that works. Every year we have a different champion. This is how it goes. The system's set up for this because the NFL figured out this is the way that we're going to maximize revenues. We're going to give everybody a chance to be competitive and win. We're going to set it up where you can have the Lions all of a sudden be strong and appear out of nowhere. I mean, this happens every year where somebody is up, but when somebody's up, somebody else is going to be down. That's kind of how this works. And to say that somehow the Packers situation, because they're losing now, it's almost like saying, God, we had a really cold summer. How can there be global warming? I mean, that you're looking at it at a very narrow place because they're losing now. It's an indictment on the system that has been incredibly successful over the past 7 seasons. You're looking at one isolated period right now and making a blanket statement and throwing out all the previous evidence, including a Super Bowl championship, to saying that somehow they're doing something wrong. They're having a down season, but that doesn't negate everything that's come before it.
I don't know why you have to defend it so hard. I mean, what all these teams that won championships have in common is they have meaningful free agents that contributed to their success, including the Packers. You could say
they did.
The
Yes,
Packers
they did.
had, without Charles Woodson, without Ryan Pickett, I mean, even Howard Green.
Howard Green,
You
yeah,
can go
sure.
on. They had a lot of guys that came in that helped shore up some of the stars that were clearly up and comers with Rodgers and Matthews, and they had some rookies that stepped up, and it all came together at once. But it was a well-formed team. Then when they signed Jared Cook, what was the last free agent that they signed? And was it like they hadn't signed one for 5 years?
Well, it depends on how you consider Julius Peppers, I suppose.
I suppose. Okay, so all right, that's fair enough. Julius is another. No, Julius has been a contributor at times.
Not as much this season.
Not much at all this season.
But the past 2 seasons, in fact, in the 2014 year, the one that they should have, they made it to the NFC Championship. They should have won that game, and they had Peppers, and he had a great year. Remember, he had a couple touchdowns that season. Yeah.
Look, Chris, if you go back a few years and look at the draft and say if that's all the way you're going to build your team, and you look at those guys and you say how many players have been special, not how many have made the team, because making the team is by definition not successful because that's the only way they can build the team. I mean, the bar is set low when that's all you take from you. So making the team isn't enough. How many are special players? They've been void of that for a number of years, and now this team, and people can, injuries. I don't know. Every year it seems the Packers are the most injured team in the NFL. I don't understand why they seem to. And maybe it's our perspective, but every year, last year's offensive line, the year before it's something else. Matthews always seems to be a problem, but I don't think I think you have 3 or 4 years of mediocre drafts. We've got this roster filled with guys. Devontae Adams is one of our better receivers, but he's not one of the better receivers in the NFL. He's just a guy. There's guys all over this roster, and it's catching up to us. I actually think against the Redskins we played as good as we could play. It's just our talent level, and then you get a few injuries, more injuries on there. That's why we're losing 4 in a row, and we're probably going to lose 5. And you look at the rest of the season, and they may not win another game.
I think they'll win a couple. I think we're looking at 6 and 10 here, but it's easy to say that now. Very simple. But at the beginning of the year, I believe you picked them to be 11-win team.
I thought they would be good.
Yeah,
I did.
Yeah.
I thought what they.
So,
Yep.
Okay, so, we can look now and say, oh, my God, they really screwed up that roster construction. Boy, what an idiot. But you were actually on the conservative side. A lot of people, fans, people who follow this team, we're talking 12 wins, 13 wins, Super Bowl berth. I mean, a lot of people thought that. It was the same damn roster. Everyone's looking at it, and now everyone's saying, oh, my God, they've really screwed this thing up. Boy, what were they doing? They didn't do this at running back. They did this at wide receiver. Look how terrible they are at cornerback. It's easy to say it now, but at the time, everyone thought they had built a Super Bowl contending roster.
I think, I got excited because I thought this is the team from 2 years ago, not last year. You bring Jordy Nelson back. All those problems now are solved because Jordy's back. Oh, you add a Jared Cook. He looks like a real player. You add that. Now, I think their offense is fixed, and it turns out that it wasn't. I don't know how you could figure that out in the offseason because, I was way off because Aaron Rodgers never played, and neither did hardly any of the other stars. So
Right.
they never actually, you couldn't actually see what you had. So you had to go based on 2014 or 15 plus Nelson plus Cook and think that they're going to be great again, and they're just not. So look, my picking them to be 11-5, you might say, that's how can you blame Ted Thompson, who that's his job. My job is to do something else, and I'm held responsible for my performance. And why shouldn't he? This is a losing season. This is a losing roster, and I think it is a reflection of his philosophy hasn't been working. And
it hasn't been working. It's been working great. The
end product is what they have today.
More successful than every team but one in the National Football League since 2009. The only team that has been more consistent, well, actually as consistent or better, you could argue, because they probably, I don't know what their regular season record is, but the Patriots. That's pretty much it. And after that, it's the Packers. And to say somehow this year is an indictment, I knew this was going to be. Yeah, you know what?
I didn't say I knew it was going to be.
Yes, you always were saying that about Ted, even when they were winning the Super Bowl. I remember the 2010 season. We did this podcast then. We were 5 years into it at that time already. Yeah. And, it was until they opened it up. You remember, they kind of lucked into the playoffs, and they got there, and you were ready to – you were eating crow big time. And then next year, of course, they came out 15-1. So – I don't think that is an indictment of the draft and develop system that Ted has. Now, I think it's fair to argue that at some point you have to hand over the reins to somebody else. I don't know if this is the year, but there's evidence to suggest. I forgot who wrote the article looking back at the coaches that had been someplace over 10 or 11 years. There's just a horrible track record. There's only a couple of coaches that have had meaningful big-time success after that period. And some of those guys go somewhere else, and then they get revitalized. I don't know why that is, but it does seem to be the way this works. And it might be true for general managers as well. The article was only about coaches. So there might be something to be said that maybe Elliott Wolf or Alonzo Highsmith or somebody else needs to take over the team, just because at some point you probably have to. And I don't know, though, that it's because of this one poor season, or what appears to be headed to being a poor season. I'd give the guys next year. If this is a continuation, I think that's your confirmation, and they probably do have to make a change at that point. But right now what we have is an outlier. If you're tracking this on a chart, this is a season that is an aberration from what has come before.
Not 2 years?
I'm sorry?
You give them you think last year was successful?
Yes.
You count that because they made it second round of the playoffs.
No, I think it was successful because they made the postseason and they won a game, and they won 11 regular season games last year. Is that correct? Yeah. And then they won a game in the postseason. I think that puts them in pretty rarefied air, actually, compared to the rest of the league. I mean, that's who you compare yourself to. What is every year a failure that you don't win the Super Bowl? I mean, that sounds nice for a soundbite, but that's not true at all. If you don't make the playoffs, you're not going to win the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
And and actually, this is a point I was been thinking about a lot, and I want to make this point. I think this is good, maybe not so much for you, but for some of people that have never really experienced the long scope of Packer football. And I know that you came of age, growing up and watching the Packers in the late 70s and into the 80s. And there was a lot of losing in the 70s and 80s.
Yep.
And a lot of people either have forgotten that or they didn't live through it. And I'm actually, in a way, it's kind of nice to see a season in which they struggle at 4-6, and I think this is going to be a bad season, have a bad end. You'll get no arguments from me on that. But I think it might remind Packers fans a lesson that we all should remember, that winning in the NFL is not easy. Being in the playoffs every year is not a birthright. It's not easy to make the playoffs. That's a great achievement. And this year, to me, is confirmation of how difficult it is to make the postseason, how difficult it is to win 10 games. We think no big deal, when do the playoffs start? Well, this is a reminder. This is not easy stuff. This isn't something that just anybody or any team or any group of guys can do. Even Aaron Rodgers, as healthy as he is, they're still struggling and they're not winning the way they have been. So maybe this is a reminder for all of us, and I include myself in this, who have become accustomed to winning over the past 20 years, gotten spoiled by this, a season like 2005, a season like 2006 where they were 500, playoff years that they've missed like in 1999 and 2000. This is a good reminder that those are special seasons. Just to get that far, to win the division and then to win a couple games is not a small achievement. It should be celebrated, and you shouldn't say, well, that's no big deal to make the playoffs. I think we know now that that is a big deal, and that's hard because every week other teams are preparing and coming gunning for you. So enjoy the victories, enjoy those playoff appearances. This year should remind all of us of that fact.
I was going to look up who the youngest team in the NFL is over. I might look that up during the break to see year after year where the Packers average, because you make it sound. Understand it's hard. You can only have one winner, so you're going to have everyone else is going to be disappointed. And as I read in the Favre biography, that losing in the Super Bowl appears to be even the worst. And I think there's some truth to that as a fan too. That getting that far, it actually is more painful the further you go. So it's all painful unless you win the Super Bowl. But wouldn't you say? I mean, the Packers' approach is there's a bit of an outlier to it. And everything you sort of measure them against is that you have you're given assume a Hall of Fame quarterback, then, fill in the blank. That's basically what the Packers have had since Favre joined in, 92?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So, that is a great given. I'm sure there are a lot of teams across the NFL would like to say since 1992, you get to play with the Hall of Fame quarterback, now build your team. The Packers have had that. Now they've built that. I don't know if Rodgers certainly Favre didn't come out of college Hall of Famer ready. So they get credit for certainly building that. But given that start, have they performed as well as they should given Thompson's approach? For me, it's more than winning and losing. It's just approaching a problem, approaching a situation. How do you approach it? Do you just stick to a very stubborn way, or do you adjust? And he does not adjust. I'm an adjuster. That's just how I would do lots of things, and it bothers me that he doesn't.
Okay, so let's look at the New Orleans Saints for a second. They have a Hall of Fame quarterback, right?
Yes, they do.
Okay, how many Super Bowls have they won in the same time period?
When
with that Hall of Fame quarterback, yes.
They have had one win.
They have one, and is the record over that time with that Hall of Fame quarterback better or worse?
I don't know.
They are worse. They haven't made the playoffs as much. You've got a situation. They've had the same coach as long as the Packers have. They were hired in the same year. Those two guys.
Yep.
And so a bitter. And I know this isn't Saints therapy, but look around at the rest of the league. There are Hall of Fame quarterbacks out there that have not had the kind of success you've had in Green Bay. Phillip Rivers. I mean, what do you think of? How about Ben Roethlisberger? How many Super Bowls? He's won 2, but under his current coach, the long tenured coach that they have there. I mean, who's had more success? I mean, that's a Hall of Fame quarterback there too. He's won a Super Bowl and he's lost one under this coach. I mean, you look at the rest of the league, and I think the Packers can compare very favorably to the Steelers and the Saints. Those are really good franchises. The Steelers are a great franchise, but there's a lot of good quarterbacks out there. If you're not named, Tom Brady, I mean, pretty much everybody else has struggled. Peyton Manning, I mean, he had the win last year, but it wasn't because of him. I mean, that was John Elway in his final years. They won that on defense. And still in his career, as great as his career was, maybe the greatest career ever in terms of just like his raw, stats, two Super Bowl wins, and so it's when we begin to criticize how the Packers have built and sustained this, they compare favorably to every team except one, and that's the Patriots. And that's a situation where even they have only won one Super Bowl in the past decade.
Well, okay, so I found this, and you can take for what it's worth. Youngest team in the league going from 2016 all the way back to 2012, and there is a consistency in these results. Number one every single year since 2012 is the Rams. Rams are number one. The average age is 25, and they've been in the low 25s since 2012. Number one every single year. Number two, the Cleveland Browns. Cleveland Browns slightly. They've been 2, 16, 9, 2, and 3. So they've been pretty consistently a young team. Number three, the Packers. Their ranks are 3, 3, 6, 6, 5. So they're one of the few teams that are consistently low. Number four, the Jaguars. They're 4, 2, 2, 5, 16. Are you sensing Rams, Browns, Jaguars? Are you sensing a trend with these types of teams?
I'm kind of curious of what your point is here. I can hardly wait to hear your point.
And then you have the Broncos is fifth. Now, the Broncos are a good team, but when you go back to 15 and beyond, they're more middle of the pack in terms of age. They're 18, 28, so forth. Teams that are young have not had a lot of success in victories. Rams, Browns, and Jaguars and the Packers are the top four, probably youngest teams the last 5 or 6 years. Being young all the time, rotating out your veterans, not signing free agents, being young all the time, you end up having young people mistakes that clearly we saw against the Redskins, and we've seen a lot this year. They grow into their talent, and very rarely do they come in NFL ready. And so they put themselves at a disadvantage by always being so young. And you get a few injuries of older guys, and now you're seeing the secondary right now. I mean, they're all babies out there. I think Micah Hyde has got experience, but and you got the two safeties. They're still relatively young. You're going to live with those mistakes. And so
Morgan Burnett's he was drafted in 2010.
Morgan Burnett, yes, he's just a mediocre
player. He's not
player.
young, and this is but he's out there playing, and this is Clinton Dix's third season, right?
Third, yep. So he's a veteran and a 3-year player. You're right.
But what you're saying, Dave, I mean, I'm not following you, and I'm sincere about this.
It's pretty easy.
Because
I'm saying the philosophy the Packers take is it keeps them extremely young. That makes a lot of mistakes.
Well, but how many mistakes can they have made, though, when they've been in the playoffs for 7 consecutive years? And in 2014, they lost the NFC Championship game in overtime. I don't believe the Browns have been in that position. The Jaguars, all the other teams that you mentioned that are the dregs of the league.
Right.
Shouldn't the Packers then be the dregs of the league? They must be doing something right to be that young and be that successful.
My point is they probably could have been more successful had they had some older players and players that experienced leaders in the locker room. Someone to stabilize the situation.
How can you prove that? Because
I can't.
Because teams that have had more experienced players haven't had any more success than the Packers. In fact, they've had less success than the Packers over the past 7 seasons.
Looking at this data here, it shows that teams that are younger tend to have poorer records. That's been that if you look through.
But the Packers they haven't had a poorer record though over this time period.
They have been an anomaly. No, that's right. So the question would be.
So Ted he's keeping the roster young and still winning. That's pretty damn good.
Maybe he could have done better. Maybe given Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah. Or it could have been worse. It could have been worse too, Dave. Right? I mean, you would admit that because we don't know.
We don't
know.
Maybe
if they had gone.
Stuck with it.
Yeah, it's your opinion, but it's not really based on anything. If you're trying to use that as a fact.
I'm watching them lose right now. I'm watching them lose with all these young players. What are you watching?
You watched them win for 7 years.
I watched them win for 7 years I have watched them win with Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers but every year it's been, there have been holes in this team. And that you might say,
there's
every team.
Every team, Dave.
Every team.
This is the way every team is injured. Every team has holes. They have a salary cap because they want holes. They want holes because that's what keeps it all even.
Well, then you must be happy. They're doing fine. Give Ted Thompson 3 more years. He's doing just great. I mean, this
Well,
team is
I think he does have 3 more years on his contract.
well. Let him go. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously, you should be on their board of directors. They're
I know
happy
I
as
should be. You're talking. Finally, you're saying something that makes sense.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah. Let
I
it
should
go.
not only be on their board. I should be chairman of the executive committee. That's what you meant to say.
Keep it young. Yep. Go ahead.
Exactly right. We don't want old guys like you, Dave. We want young, vital guys.
Yeah, like Fackrell as he runs on the field with as the play is going. Did you see that play where he came in late?
Yeah.
But you see the end of the play, what happened to him? Where he got thrown like 10 yards down the field?
I did. I did see that. What I was wondering about is, when he ran onto the field, why didn't Cousins, when he could see him, why didn't he snap the ball before he was in place? I mean, it's like he almost like waited for him to get his position, and then they went. You think they could have got a penalty, or they could have done something, snapped the ball before he was in place. As it turned out, they scored anyway on the play.
It didn't matter, is the answer.
But I was really surprised that they didn't take advantage of that. They could have got a penalty or something else. But at that point, the team was so dispirited anyway. The defense was just, they were sad sack at that point. And I don't know what, is it the young players? Is it a lack of talent at that point? I mean, they had Clay Matthews on the field. I don't know if he was 100% or not. I think the only guy happier than Nick Perry, I think, to see Clay Matthews was Nick Perry's agent, because he was able to get a sack and maybe run up some more contract numbers. That was probably about the only good thing that happened from having Matthews out there. But they gave up yards on the ground. They didn't have a tremendous pass rush, and of course we saw the problems they had in the secondary. I'm not sure we can say it's all not having Sam Shields. I think he would have helped a lot, but certainly they didn't go into this season expecting that they were going to not have him for all but a game and a half. So that was something that they expected. Then okay, that's fine. We've got Randall, and based on last season, Randall and Rollins look pretty good. Well, they haven't. Randall's not played in over a month, and Rollins is not nearly the player that he was last year. I don't know why.
Boy, he looks slow. Didn't he look slow from the deep balls? And maybe they knew that
it's not
already.
Just slow. I think you're right. He did look slow, but it was more than that, though. It looked like I heard somebody speculate he's lost all confidence. He's overthinking things. He's not playing with enthusiasm. It's more than just physical stuff. I think he's goofed up in his head, and it almost makes me wonder, is he ever going to get that back? I mean, I think that's the hardest thing when you start failing that way. Can you ever really come back? And that's an issue. I'm sure when they were planning out this season, who are we going to have on this team? What do we have to get? I'm sure they were expecting both Randall and Rollins to take a step up. Even if Shields wasn't able to play, I think they felt pretty good about those guys. They did not expect not to have Randall, and they certainly didn't expect Rollins to take a dramatic step back. I don't think the plan was, we're okay going with Legarius Gunter. I don't think that was really what they wanted for this season. But that's what they have now. And I was hearing some things about their need to have their defensive backfield be a part of the running game. I mean, it's a predicated part of this defense. And I think one of the reasons why you get guys who are looking in the backfield, I think one of the reasons why you get guys who are slow to chase receivers, I think schematically, they're expected to support the run. And when you're supporting the run, that means, you're not selling out against that deep pass. And that's why I think they've been beaten as they have on the long passes this season. For whatever reason, their players are very conscious about the run, which is a good thing. You want to stop the run, but not at the expense of letting them get behind you. And we've seen that, man, it seems like the last several weeks when teams have been scoring 38 points a game on them, that's just been a way too common occurrence.
Yeah, I thought the couple plays I saw with Rollins, it did feel like he's slow, and then someone I thought mentioned his 40 time really isn't super fast. He's a slot corner, not a edge corner, and you're having to throw these guys into places they're not comfortable with. I'm not condemning everything on this one game. There is surely deficiencies in this game. There are a lot of bad. I mean, and
Don't call me Shirley.
And that never gets old. Actually,
Okay.
it does. It
It
does.
does.
It
It
does get
does,
old.
but it's still funny.
Yeah. But I feel like it's hard. There's so many injuries in this game that I think at some point you have to say, okay, I disagree with Thompson. I think McCarthy. I don't think he may be the best game coach of all time. But all that, I mean, there's a ton of injuries, and that's what I did tweet, and I think it is
Yeah.
hard to recover. I mean, it was one guy after another. I think that's losing teams. I think it encourages losing. People stretch, or try to make
Right.
plays. Maybe
Yeah.
they shouldn't. They're
Yeah.
out of position. I think injuries sort of happen. I, to me, I think losing and injuries sometimes go hand in hand, or not being prepared, trying too hard. I think those are all sort of symptoms of things. So this
Yeah.
is just a team that's in disarray right now. And
Yes.
one of the things, in terms
We
of
agree on that point for sure. This is a team in disarray. I think we're on the same page there.
one of the things I think that doesn't help, that does, I think, with young players, is there are very few leaders in the locker room that are playing that appear to have leadership quality, like a Charles Woodson to maybe stabilize, or I don't know even if they're stars right now. Matthews and Rogers are leader type guys, so maybe that's part of it too. Is you don't have guys that can encourage these younger guys that can get Rollins' head back on straight. In the Favre biography, Derek Mays talked about that he learned more from when Andre Rison showed up in Green Bay than he had in most of his career. He learned a ton from him, and I thought, boy, I never thought about that. Now, Derek Mays
No.
didn't turn out to be a Hall of Fame or anything, so I
No.
don't know how much he learned. But I mean, there's who is Gunter learning from right now? That's suiting up. Who is he looking up to?
It
Coaches?
should have been Sam Shields. It probably was last year. But now that I understand Shields is in Florida too during his recovery or his time on the IR, so he's not learning from him now. But I presume he did last year when he was around.
Yeah, and but now, as they go to the sidelines, sit down on the bench, and who
Well,
comes up?
they've got two defensive backfield coaches. I mean, Mike mentioned this. He tweeted me earlier today, and there was an argument made that I forget if it was Bill Michaels or who it was saying that the Packers or maybe it's Leroy Butler, that they lack veteran players that can kind of school the younger players, but they do have two. They have a safeties coach and a cornerbacks coach, and they're good coaches. Joe Witt. And I forget the other guy now.
Yeah.
But they got two of them. I mean, shouldn't they be learning from those guys?
Well, but you played on sport teams. Is the leadership just the coaches and a bunch of knuckleheads? I mean, did you have guys that were players that sort of would set you straight? And didn't you do that for other players? I mean, it's more than just your coaches. I know NFL might be different because they have so many. And my high school coaches, there was just a couple. But I mean, I felt like there were guys on the team who were leaders and could kind of step up when things got out of hand. And I don't know who the Packers would be. They may be. I mean, Mike Daniels.
Morgan
and,
Burnett is out there. I mean, Mike Daniels, I think he might be trying too hard.
Yeah.
He's had a couple of major penalties, and he had a penalty this week on a third down. They finally stopped him on third down, and there he is knocking Kirk Cousins down. Now, I know McCarthy. McCarthy wasn't happy about that either.
Yeah.
But by the way they call it now, by the rules, yeah, that probably was the right penalty. I hate it. I think that's a Jeff Triplett kind of call. I hate that stuff, but that's the way the game is called now. And I think they only scored a field goal on that drive, but still. Come on.
Yeah.
You got a chance.
To stop there. Yeah.
Oh, you needed to stop so bad. And that was there. Now, it wasn't as bad as the Dayton Jones thing where he kind of went Indomitian Sue. I mean, come on, man.
Well, that's what losing teams do, right?
That's what losing teams do. That's exactly right. Yep.
They get hurt and they make penalties and they drop balls. They do stuff like what Jeff Janis did in the end zone. And I thought, that thing letting it land is bad enough, and then not being able to sort of make up your mistake by diving on it. I thought there's a chance that Janis would be let go today. I
thought he'd be let go right during the game.
Yeah, right there.
I mean, that was unconscionable. I just, there are some guys, and I was a baseball player through my schooling experience, and there are just certain guys that maybe are good athletes and they've got physically they got things going for them, but they just really don't understand how to play You know,
Yeah.
and I think Jeff Janis might be one of those guys where he's big, he's strong, he's fast. I don't think he understands how to play.
Yeah.
Carlos Gomez, the baseball player used to be for the Brewers, and now he's with the Texas Rangers. He was one of those guys too that I don't think he had a very good sense for how the game is supposed to be played. He had a lot of enthusiasm and energy, and he was charismatic, and a lot of good things. But when it came to playing the game, I just don't think he understands it fully. And I think Jeff Janis is that exactly. He's got all the tools, all the talent, but he doesn't know how to play. And that was
no savvy. Right?
Yeah, thank you, savvy. That's the word. It's not as good as flaccid, but it does have two consonants that are right next to each other.
That's true. Yeah, I mean, we're like everything that Charles Woodson had, even as his physical.
Oh, exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
That's the anti Janis right there. There's a guy, physically gifted as all heck, but just savvy. And you remember some of the things that, here we are reminiscing, but some of the things that Woodson would do, taking the ball away. He would be the guy like Josh Norman punching the ball out of the guy's hand. Right. Oh, God, I miss Charles Woodson.
Yeah, even although later on he was grabbing and holding, and but it's too much savvy kind of cost him a bit. But that is something that reflects this team too. It feels, I think Rogers has lots of savvy. The way he bounces around the pocket, it's pretty amazing the way he can avoid sacks. He should be sacked. He should have been sacked into Redskins probably 12 times. I mean, he is able to escape pressure. But you kind of look, and I think Randall Cobb, Jordy Nelson, some of those, but all the other guys that they have on offense, it feels like Starks is a guy who I don't think has a lot of savvy, right? I mean, he feels like he runs hard and then he bounces the outside every time.
That's his thing.
There's
That's his
not
thing.
a run that he doesn't like to take the outside.
And he's lost a little burst. I mean, he's 30 years old, and he just looks ponderous. I mean, he doesn't have the energy that he had in those early years when he kind of was a catalyst and leading to the Super Bowl. He just does not have whatever it was he had. It was great to see him get the touchdown, and he maybe has a little bit of the veteran experience now, but his physical skills, I think he's gotten a lot out of what he had to give.
I agree. Yeah. Well, should we take a break after that? Long argument, basically.
Well, but that's Packers therapy, ladies.
I feel worse.
Gentlemen, yeah. You feel worse?
I do. There's no therapy.
I feel better. I feel cleansed.
Do you?
I feel like our relationship has been renewed. I think we might start sleeping together again.
That's not going to happen. That's why I moved to St. Louis.
You can make me sleep on the couch again.
The restraining order is still in place. You cannot come anywhere near this arch.
Thank God. So protect this arch. Yeah. Okay. Well, it's Chris and Dave yucking it up in a 4-6 season. Hey, we've seen worse. We lived through 2005, our first season when they were 4-12.
Yeah.
So Packers fans, you got Aaron Rodgers still. I don't know how this is gonna shake out, but you still got that guy. He's still upright. Maybe not this season. The therapy here before we go to the break is, just as you contemplate in the milliseconds that you'll have between the pause here. Aaron Rodgers had 115 passer rating in this game. Now there'll be people talking about garbage time, but he looked increasingly like the guy that we're used to seeing. And if he does not get injured, he's only going to be 33 years old. His 33rd birthday is in a couple of weeks. As long as they have him, they can retool this thing. May not be maybe next or maybe the year after. He's still got some time to play. It's not all doom and gloom. It's not like he's 37 or 38 years old and limping around out there. So, 4-6, not so good. But I don't necessarily buy into this thing that, the future is bleak and they got to blow the whole thing up. So anyway, we're going to take a little break. We're going to come back on the backside, talk more about the game. We've got some correspondence to go through. We'll have betting lines to see who will be in the Packers Therapy Hotel and Casino, and we'll also have some popular culture. We'll get to all that right after we take this break. Back with more Packers Therapy. Chris and Dave talking about a disappointing loss, fourth in a row for the Packers. They fall to 4-6, third place in the NFC North, 2 games now behind the Vikings and the Lions. It's fun to be a football fan. It's great. We get a lot of enjoyment, and Dave and I going back and forth about our favorite football team, and I think it's something it's important to remember is that most of us listening to this podcast right now, or doing this podcast right now, are healthy and we can enjoy the game. But one of the members of our Packers community wasn't able to enjoy the game yesterday, and he passed away. His name is Adam Check, and I think Packers fans who are on the internet and have encountered Adam's writing over the years, serious Packers fan, 34 years old, died of colon cancer, leaves behind a young family, a wife, 2 little kids that are preschoolers, and there is a GoFundMe program out there right now. Dave and I chipped in a few dollars to that. 81 people, as of this recording, have given almost $4,000 toward a $25,000 goal. So if you have read Adam's work over the years, if you liked what he had to do, or even if you weren't familiar with Adam, I encourage you to go to the GoFundMe page. It's Adam's Pack is the name of the page, Adam's Pack, and it's a GoFundMe project for a 34-year-old Adam Check who passed away over the weekend. And it's if you're a Packers fan, this is a member of our community, and if you got a couple of dollars and you're able to do it, Dave and I hope that you will go and check that out on GoFundMe. You can take a look at all the people who've been giving money. You'll recognize some of them, including Andrew Brandt, I see, is one of the donors to that, and a lot of people whose names you might recognize from around the internet. So please, if you get a chance, you go and do that. I think it would be very meaningful to his widow and his 2 young children. So that aside, Dave, we talked in the first segment about what on the spacecraft still works. Yeah, right.
I'll tell you what's not working.
My tongue is not working.
Right.
But what went wrong then? I mean, we were asked, what on the spacecraft is good, what on the spacecraft is bad, and I think there's a lot of things. But what stands out to you at this point being maybe the worst thing right now that is really getting in the way of this team getting off the schneid and getting back on the winning track?
Yeah, I mean, there's the really obvious things that were poor, the late substitutions and the coverage down the field. But so I think there are a few things, though, that are kind of the second-tier stuff that really troubles me. And I wanted to ask you about this one. I think it's time to look at Clinton Dix and Morgan Burnett and say, are these guys really just very, very average safeties? I think we went into the season thinking they're both healthy, playing together. They've got experience now of their 3 years and 4 years with Morgan Burnett.
No, 6, I think. He was drafted in 2010.
Okay, sorry. So he's so much. So, but we thought these guys would be a real anchor in the backfield. I saw Morgan Burnett make a couple plays, but in a couple of the long runs that he gets out of position. And Clinton Dix, he had 4 tackles, but these guys are not really impact players. Pass defense, there's 1 out of all the passes that happened. I mean, these guys are supposed to be coverage guys. They're not big safeties, and I don't see them making tremendous plays like other good safeties in the league. I feel like, and maybe they're having to cover for the other corners who are out of position and other things, but I'm really disappointed with their play overall. You think that's fair?
Yeah, I don't think it's unfair. Let's put it that way. I guess I had really high hopes for Clinton Dix based on that 2014 NFC Championship game. He had 2 interceptions. I know that it was over his head that 2-point conversion happened. But I was like, hey, he's a rookie. He looked good, and I thought, this was a guy who had a great future. And I think he did improve last season, and so I expected the arrow to be pointing up. And he's not been great. I mean, he's had a couple of interceptions this season. He's had some games where he's played well, but he's not been a real difference maker. And I gotta admit, I'm a little bit spoiled because I remember, well, from my youth, I remember some really excellent safeties they had. But more recently, Leroy Butler, who is kind of a fringe Hall of Fame player. And then Nick Collins. Nick Collins, his first couple of years wasn't great, but his last couple of years, I think he was on a trajectory that, he could have been maybe considered for the Hall of Fame had he not had that neck injury against Carolina. I think it was in the second game of that 2011 season. So, it may not be fair to these guys because Morgan Burnett's never really been that guy anyway.
No.
But I thought maybe Clinton Dix was going to be that ball hawking, game changing guy, and instead what you have is I think you have two players that are okay. They're not difference makers or game changers. They're not gifted or not special. They're not Nick Collins in his last couple of seasons with the Packers, and so I don't think they're bad. But they're not who I thought they were going to be this season. I really had higher expectations. And, of course, as we know, Dave, expectations are premeditated resentments.
That's fair enough. I've not heard that before. I have more. You want to hear all my disappointments?
Well, I don't know if we have that much time.
Well, I'll try to focus it on the Packers.
Okay. Well done.
Yeah. The Clay Matthews play. One tackle, but his dance card was full that Sunday night. He seemed to dance with maybe one of the left tackles in particular.
Yeah.
I don't recall
him.
him.
Bull rush that guy, yeah.
But every time they showed him, that was like the only move he had. I just wonder if they're not playing him correctly. If he should be moving him around, he should be a terror as he's coming from the left, coming from the right, coming up the middle. He's doing stunts and things. It felt like so many times he's just one-on-one on this guy and, finds himself on the ground more often than not. And
I have a theory on that.
That he's hurt?
Right. Or he's afraid. He's had bulky hamstrings for a long time, and when you're playing on the edge, that speed rush, it's an explosive deal. You got to dip under and beat the guy. And I think maybe the reason he was bull rushing is because that was probably easier than torquing his body in order to get around that tackle. I'm not sure that he's 100%. Or even if he, maybe technically is 100%, mentally he's probably worried about blowing that thing out again. I don't know who came up with the idea first, but I'm subscribing to the notion that he might be better playing in the middle. We mentioned this last year just because they seem to be a better defense with him in the middle, but I think it's easier on his body. I know you have to take on a lot more linemen in the middle, but you don't have to explode around the edge. That seems to be the problem for his legs. He's always had hamstring problems, but he played 2 seasons in the middle without having those problems, and it may be better for his hamstrings to play in the middle. It might not be better for his body because he's going to get pummeled a lot more. But I just like him in, I mentioned this last year. When he's in the middle of the field, that's where a lot of the action takes place. It doesn't take place on the edge. It takes place in the middle. And it's somehow having your best player, I'd mentioned Junior Seau. It didn't end well for him, but Junior Seau was a force in the middle of the field. And I think that Matthews could be that kind of guy. A lot of people say, no, you're wasting him there. I just don't think that his body's able to hold up to the demands of being an edge rusher.
I don't know what kind of injuries he's always facing. I guess a lot of hamstring stuff, if that is more of a stress on it when you're trying to do an edge rush as opposed to taking on linemen, in the middle of the field, I don't know. And he certainly wouldn't be rushing the passer on every play when you play in the middle. He'd play on coverage.
Right.
Maybe that saves you, from some injuries because you're fewer plays where you're mixing it up. So I don't know, but you were hoping his return would have made a difference. And as you say, Nick Perry got a sack, and some of that Peppers got a sack. Maybe some of that helped. A couple times I'm sure they were mindful of Matthews and double teamed him, but if we're going to win this game, given the lineup that we had out there, we needed him to be special. and he didn't do a whole lot of special plays. The other thing I thought was the chance we had to win this game was to come out hot on offense. Get the ball, score. I don't know if they won the toss. I felt they heard that they won the toss and they decided to receive, and that usually they
Right,
defer.
right.
So I thought that was interesting. Not a terrible decision, although they went 3 and out, and that was too bad. But that we need to start fast, and they went 3 and out 3 times. And now after that, it was still nothing. Redskins scored, and I think the Packers then scored. How'd that go? They went 3 and out. So did the Redskins. Went 2 punts, and then they scored. The Packers scored, so it's 7-7. But I thought if we could have started fast and gotten a lead on Washington, then this game probably changes a bit. And the personality, everything, defense, I think everything sort of changes if they would have gotten, say, a score on their first drive. But they go 3 no yards, 3 plays, 2 yards, 3 plays, 7 yards, and now they're playing behind. I thought that was really tough, and they got to figure out a way to start faster. I don't know if this was true as much at this game, but do they start to try and run more again, and then they kind of ditch that to more of the all pass, and then it becomes better offense, or is it just when teams play with the lead, they get more relaxed and you can move the ball more? I'm not quite sure what the cause and effect is, but they're starting slow, and that's a consistent theme of this offense.
I think you're probably going to see them revert more to the run now that they have Michael, the guy they picked up from Seattle. I think that's probably a guy that when he figures the system out is going to be their starting guy instead of Starks, and I think they want to run the ball. I think their deal is that they believe that sets up play action passes and it allows them to get the ball downfield. I think that's the kind of team they want to be, and it's the kind of team they haven't been able to. And so I think you're going to see more of them trying to do exactly that, trying to run the ball early in the game especially. I don't know that's the right thing for them to do. I kind of like that offense where they have 4 and 5 wides and they get it out of there quickly and they move it, 7-8 yards at a time. They had a drive this game, 17 plays, longest drive of Aaron Rodgers' career. The fact that it wasn't derailed by some kind of mistake is pretty remarkable. But I'm perfectly fine with that kind of efficiency and moving the ball down the field. I like that. It seems when they run the ball, it's kind of herky-jerky. And that I view the injury to Eddie Lacy as being a positive for them, because it allows them to do what I think they do best. They kept 7 receivers for a reason. I know they've lost some of those guys subsequently, but you got those receivers. You might as well use them. And now with Cook back in particular, why do you want all those weapons if you're going to be handing the ball off? So, far as I'm concerned, I think they would be better off, trying to pass the ball. And I think they started slow because they tried to run it early. I don't think that's a good idea for them.
Yeah, although the first play, it was funny. The announcer picked it up right away. The very first play was a pass that went incomplete, and he was right. This is indicative of how the Packers play. The first play, Rodgers took a snap and then started to run around the backfield, and I think that was maybe the first sign. Like, really, the first play, you can't script to something that would just kind of be a quick release. You remember, it seemed like every single play when Favre played, they would do that rollout, and a tight end would be running out there with them, and the fullback or something.
Something sure, right. Something that they could get the momentum going.
Yeah, just get that first pass down, get 5 to 8 yards, maybe breaks a tackle. They did that all the time as the first play of the game. And I think they did it to settle Favre down a bit. I think that makes sense for the Packers to run something like that next week. Get Rodgers his first pass rather than shotgun. Everyone goes down the field. He runs around, for his life. And they went 3 and out on that play. So we'll see if they can pick up on that.
Well, I really think what we're going to see is them trying to, run the ball, force the ball. I think Michael's going to play a lot, and but maybe this guy is going to be good. I don't want to, I saw him play with the Seahawks. Maybe he's going to be better than Eddie Lacy. Maybe he's going to be the guy like, when they had Starks come in 2010. He was a big boost for the offense, and And maybe having him as a threat, maybe that's going to be a real turning point in the season for them. I doubt it, but maybe that's the whole key, getting a credible running threat, and that sets up their ability to pass the ball down the field. I'm not a believer, but on the other hand, having this guy in this environment, maybe that's going to help him. It makes you wonder, though. They let him go for a reason, and you wonder what that reason was. And we may, a couple of weeks from now, we may know exactly why he was expendable from the Seahawks.
Yeah, you'd think, why would they let a guy go in the, to be picked up by someone in the division? But the one thing that makes me nervous, I don't know if there was a shot of Michael sitting on the bench, and he's the newest guy on the team, and they showed a shot of him, huddled in a big jacket, which I'm sure it was cold, but sitting on the bench and looking completely disinterested. Now, that was a quick shot on the camera. It's impossible to know if that's what that looked like or that's what was happening. But I would think, man, I'd like to see him as new on the team, maybe holding that jacket, but standing up and sort of being engaged in the game.
Right,
He's sitting in the back there. I don't know if you saw any of that. I thought it was him that I saw, and I thought that's not a great look for a guy that just joined the team. I hate the cold, sitting out in the cold too, so it's nothing more miserable than that, and it's gotten cold here in St. Louis. But I don't know if you read anything into that. I guess we'll soon find out how engaged he is.
Well, what bothered me is, the only thing you know about this guy is what you read, and they call the Seattle reporters, and a couple people make comments that he had some maturity, questions, preparation issues early on in his tenure. They let him go once. He came back. I guess he was better, but there's a lingering kind of taste from earlier on. And so when your initial impression of him, when you see him along the sidelines, it does just kind of confirm this idea that his off the field game maybe isn't very strong, which makes him expendable to Seattle. And you just all you have is a little quick look on the sidelines. It all started in the backyard. What you read in the paper, it may be tonally meaningless, but you always wonder, if this guy is that good, why did someone let him go? I guess you could say that about Amon Green, although that was a trade situation. That one worked out pretty well. But, Mike Holmgren thought he was expendable, and he wound up being the Packers' all-time leading rusher. So maybe it, changes scenery. Maybe he's more mature now. Maybe he was just cold on a cold night, a cold, windy night in Washington. Yeah. So I guess we got to give the guy a chance and wait and see. But boy, would it be great if he wound up being somehow, the missing piece for them, and and they wound up sneaking into the playoffs. Not impossible, given the fact that either the Vikings or the Lions will lose on Thursday. I can promise you, one of them will lose. Well, I can't promise because I guess they could tie. It's happened this season. Yeah. But I am feeling like 99% sure one of those two teams is going to lose. And if that's the case, okay, then they're one game out of second place. There'll be a game and a half, I guess, and then there'll be a game and a half or 2.5 games out of first place, with the Lions and Vikings still ahead of them too. I mean, they have those guys. If they're able to kind of turn this around, it's not impossible with 6 games to play. I don't think they're going to win all 6, but I'm not even sure that they're going to win more than 2, but still there is that possibility as long as you got Aaron Rodgers upright. You got a chance pretty much every game you play. They'll be getting more guys back on the defensive side of the ball too. So we'll see. I don't want to count them out yet, but it sure doesn't look good right now.
No, it does. I mean, but the defense, it appears impossible for them to improve, and I don't think it's the defense that will get better. But I think the offense can make the defense better by being, they got to score a lot and helping teams be one-dimensional. If we could jump, say, we scored, Redskins punts, and we kick a field goal. Now it's 10-0. I think Washington plays differently. I don't know if they are able to do everything that they want to do. They may not hand the ball off to Robert Kelly for 24 times, and on a windy night, maybe that's much more difficult for Kirk Cousins. All that could have happened if they would have put some pressure on, but we didn't. But that's a little bit of therapy for me. I think the defense could improve just by the offense. The offense needs to be great. I mean, and I don't know how you do that now, but maybe if Michael comes in and really dials up the running game, Cook comes back, you've got the intermediate game, and all of a sudden you've got guys wide open and wide receivers that you haven't had a year and a half. It's possible. I don't see it, but that would be the formula for me to see like how could they make this into a successful quote season.
So what's the prognosis on Jake Ryan? You wonder. They're out there playing with Carl Bradford.
Yeah.
And it's like, wow, that's a blast from the past. I think I'd rather have Jake Ryan out there, but I don't. His injury must be significant if they're bringing back Carl Bradford.
Yeah, I guess so. And I thought Joe Thomas. I thought, give Joe Thomas. He's a big hitter, and it wasn't like Jake Ryan was. He seems solid at best, right? And so, could Joe Thomas at least fill that role and still be a reasonable defense? I was hopeful.
When we saw him play, he looked like a player.
He did. I mean, he looked just fine. And I think that both Ryan and Martinez, when they were back playing, the defense early on had a very good running game. I think they were a part of that, a running defense at least. And I thought they were definitely a part of that. Bradford is, that's what happens when you have injuries. I think that talent gets diluted, and he's not nearly as good. Otherwise, he'd have made the team.
Now, you said Joe Thomas a big hitter. Question: who's a bigger hitter, Joe Thomas or the Dalai Lama?
I have no idea what you're going for there.
You didn't see Caddyshack?
I have, but I don't know how to quote it. You're going to
he's a big hitter, the Llama. You didn't? Okay. Well,
yeah. Okay.
You know what though? There are 6,000 people around the world laughing at that right now.
That may be a little bit overstated.
Yeah. Well, they're probably laughing at you for not getting that brilliant reference to Caddyshack.
This is Bill Murray when he's hitting the flowers.
Well, this is when he's out there talking about that he was looping for the Dalai Lama, and the Lama didn't, tip him. He said, "Hey, what about a little something for the trouble?" And he said that, that on his deathbed he'll have total consciousness.
Okay.
So and I got that going for me, which is which is nice. Yeah. But along the way he says he's a big hitter, the Llama.
Yes, I do remember. I do remember that. Thanks. I thought you were going for Joe Thomas's father, who I guess is now.
Well, as a matter of fact, isn't he the oldest Division I football player?
Yeah, I saw a picture of his father. He looks old.
Well, he does, but apparently he's in great shape. I mean, Thomas was talking about how his, dad and him race and stuff still, and his father may be, well, he's actually younger than I am. I think he's 55. But the thing is that the guy keeps himself in great shape, and I guess did he get a couple of carries or something in the game for South Carolina State or something like that? Yeah.
He did play, so it wasn't a Rudy situation. He got a couple of carries in the middle of the game or the late end of the game, but it's worth looking up. You look up Joe Thomas's father. Legitimately, his father is on a college football team. That's a real story. Yeah.
And I think it is South Dakota or South Carolina State. I think it is.
Okay. Yeah.
It's something like that. Yeah.
Well, you threw me off with the Dalai Lama, so I'm sorry. I'm not as. Well, I don't know
you're not as cool as I am.
Early '80s movie references as you are.
Well, that was my sweet spot,
Yeah. Is that late 70s or early 80s?
I thought it was like 1980, like 1980 or 81.
That's
something like that.
Right.
As long as people are running to the internet to look up something, here's something Packer related. It's an article. I sent it to you, Dave. It's called Aaron Rodgers and Growing Weary with Greatness. It's written by a guy named Cian Fahey, Cian Fahey, Fahey, and it's on his blog. And I thought it was really, really well written. Aaron Rodgers and Growing Weary with Greatness. And his thrust is basically that Rodgers has set a standard for himself that he's having difficulty now meeting. And in that way, I think we've heard this before, but he makes a pretty good case for the fact that Rodgers is still great. He's just not as great as he was, and so he seems worse than he is, if that makes any sense at all.
I think that certainly can. But something we should not pass this over, that the full week this week was about Rodgers and his relationship with his family.
Oh, yeah.
Which I don't know if is it worth talking about or not. In this game, I didn't think Rodgers was the problem. When he's missing guys that are wide open, you think, what is going on? And he certainly isn't playing at his high level. I thought this was a pretty good game for him. But the stuff that's coming out, that he hasn't talked to his family
Yeah,
since 2014.
in 2 years. In 2 years, yeah.
Didn't go to his grandfather's funeral, which...
And he was close to his granddad, I guess.
Yeah, I guess he called him all the time before games. I saw, on, this isn't just, articles that was on The Bachelor. His brother said that they don't have a relationship. His parents said they don't really have a relationship with him. And I think they said something about how fame can really change a person. You look at all that and you look at his decline and you think there's I think it's easy for professional writers and things to sort of dismiss that and say, look, I don't get into the personal stuff. But we have podcasts, so we can do that. I'm convinced that that his relationship with Olivia Munn and being around a movie star and having that lifestyle is affecting his play. We don't have to get into it that much. There's no way for me of verifying that, but I am convinced within myself that is a serious factor. No one doesn't talk to their parents for 2 years just because of some squabble. I think that relationship is probably square in the middle, and it's got to be affecting him some. Is that worth talking about at all, or do we just kind of let that go?
Well, I don't know. It's of interest to me as well because, these are human beings. I mean, we see them on Sundays or next week on Monday night, and that's kind of our experience with them. We read about them during the week. Maybe we watch some highlights, but that's it. I mean, they have real lives. This is their job. They come in the morning. I guess they come in early, 7 o'clock. They stay there, 5, 6 o'clock in the evening, and then they go home like everybody else does. They may have homework that they do, or they may, like I'm watching The Crown right now on Netflix. I mean, maybe that's what they do is they go home and Netflix and chill,
Right now?
Yeah, well, I'm bored as hell about this podcast, so I'm watching The Crown here. It's a hell of a show.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's, the thing is that they live in the real world with the rest of us. They have a more glamorous or interesting job. They get paid better than most of us do. But still, these things are factors. And anybody who's been, has had a falling out with their parents or their, significant other, you bring that with you to the office. And whether your office is, one where you're in a cubicle or one where you got to, put on a helmet and pads, I mean, that kind of stuff, I think it's hard not to let it carry over. Sometimes it can motivate you, and I think sometimes it can weigh on you and weigh on, when disappointments happen. How do you respond when this is just another thing that's screwed up in your life? And I don't know if that's the case with Aaron Rodgers, but I don't think it's a crazy thing to speculate about if this is true, that he is essentially divorced from his mom and dad and his brothers. The word was that he was close to those people. They were important parts of his life. But for whatever reason, if it's Olivia Munn or it's something else, there's now a wedge between them. I don't know that you can just check that out and compartmentalize it. Some people can, but a lot of people, it affects every other part of their life. So I don't know. It's interesting that his level of play does seem to have dipped since supposedly when he had this falling out with his family. So we'll see. We'll see going forward. I mean, maybe there'll be a reconciliation, and maybe he'll still be uneven in his play.
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily mean that if he gets on well with his family that his play is going to turn around. I don't think it's quite that simple, because he does turn 33 next month. He will not be getting any younger. The cells in his body will still be decaying at an ever rapid rate. So that's just kind of how that goes, and it's hard to parse it out, which is the emotional personal side, which is just a physical decline. How much of it's psychological? How many times can a guy get hit and still be comfortable in the pocket? There's so many factors that go into it, but I will not discount the possibility that that tumult in his personal life is impacting in some way his consistency of play.
Yeah, you've seen The Natural, right? I mean, The Natural makes it very clear. that the girl that you met in high school, you stay with her. You don't go with the Hollywood girl that you meet on the road that gives all the flash. That's when you stop hitting home runs. You go back. He needs to go back to some high school sweetheart, get married, have a family, live a boring life, and then dedicate the exciting part of your life to football and not going to red carpet events and the Oscars and all that stuff. This is about me, not about him and his family. I want him back as the way he was. So hopefully that will happen.
That's why I think they need to pass out steroids in the locker room, because if it makes the Packers better, if it makes them win for me and Dave, that is really all that matters.
That's right.
And I think Sam Shields should get his ass back on the field and play, because the Packers need him. I need him to be out there. I don't care if his brain box is going to be permanently damaged. As a fan, Sam, you owe it to me, you owe it to Dave to get out there with a brain injury and play. That's what I think.
Lead with your head and let's get going.
Exactly.
Strap it on.
Sacrifice your body for us.
Yes, I agree.
Nobody cares about us, Dave. These guys, oh boy, look at me. I'm Demetrius, Goodson, and I got a little owie in my leg.
That is actually pretty sad.
That is actually pretty. It's pretty weak that he couldn't play through that.
Well, that's the second. I didn't see the Kinkley video, which I still need to look up, but I heard that was. There's a lot of crying in football lately. That's
but it's because there's no crying in baseball. If you cry, baby, you play football. Really.
Yeah, that's fair.
The thing is that, again, these are real people, and you get hurt. I think you get afraid, especially if it's not just that it hurts; it's your livelihood, and also the fact that a lot of these guys really like it too, and the notion that it could be taken away from them, the money part of it being taken away from them, the notion that, oh my God, it's going to be. If I ever play again, it'll be a year, and I'll have to work my way back. I mean, all that's got to wash over you. And I think, despite the fact that the guy was the NFL Defensive Player of the Year, I believe, he's a human being as well. And as far as Goodson goes, I've been hearing people saying, dude will never play again. He had a Joe Theismann-like injury, which is interesting that it happens against the Washington football team too. And I don't think Sam Shields. These guys are humans, and when those things happen, it's over. It's over, and they got to do something else. And I certainly can't blame them for breaking down. If this is what you wanted to do your whole life. Your whole life's built around it. Everything you've done, the dedication, then it's gone. It's just gone, and you're like 26 years old, and it's done.
I agree. It's sad.
Yeah.
Betting line?
Speaking of sad, we have the betting lines.
Yes.
So why don't you run us through what we had last week? Now, did Mitno Miller do his part? Was he on top?
I have it. I think we have an error on the spreadsheet, which.
Oh, impossible! This is Mitno Miller.
Well, I think it's possible. You can help me do the math here. There's a math problem. Maybe we should stop having Mike do math problems. He's got Excel. And he seems very proficient at Excel, but
Mike is brilliant. Come on now, Mike is brilliant. I think we both know that.
I think we might have to cut his pay. Let's go through this.
Not again.
He's listening to this right now, thinking like, no way, it's not possible. Let's see if this
crying.
is possible. Yeah. All right, number one, I asked how many running plays to Green Bay running backs will there be. You set the line at 17.5. Non-Aaron Rodgers running, he had 9. Is that correct?
No.
We have 4.
No, Aaron ran it 3 times. And Hundley ran it once. So I would imagine we have to eliminate.
So here's the thing. He has it down. I guess I did say that to Green Bay running backs. How do you put Ty Montgomery?
He's running back.
You call him a running back?
The quarterback has said as much.
All right. Well, you said it at 17.5. It was the under regardless.
Yeah, it'd be 15 because there were four carries by quarterbacks, 19 total for 15 for guys out of the backfield.
So the unders are correct. That part at least is correct. Okay.
My unders are correct. There's no doubt about that. Jockey, in fact. Yeah.
Number 2, Kirk Cousins passing yards. You set the line at 282. The actual was 375, so the overs had that one.
Do Do you get nostalgic thinking about jockey underwear because it's from your hometown, right?
Racine?
Oh, is it? No, it's Kenosha.
Yeah, I think it's.
Is it Racine or Kenosha?
Well, it's not Racine.
All right.
I don't think.
Well, aren't they kind of the same thing?
No, that's.
No?
How about Kringle? I'm nostalgic
Oh,
for Kringle.
Kringle. I love Kringle.
Yeah, it's.
In fact, I love Kringle while I'm sitting in my jockey underwear.
What's wrong with you?
Well, do we have enough time to go into that?
Yeah, we can go through what's wrong with you and the things that I'm disappointed in. We could spend hours.
So, Kirk Cousins 375. You went way over my guess.
So penalties against Green Bay, and Mike is correct. He said I'll include those declined or offset, which I think is a fair thing to do because how would you do that? Line is 7.5. It was 7, so the unders had that one correct. This is the one where I feel like there might be an error. I had said, what's the line on Aaron Rodgers' touchdowns minus interceptions? I have that as 3. What do you have that as?
That would be 3. Yeah.
3. Yes, he has 0. So I don't know if not quite sure what he's going for with 0, but I think the overs have won that one. It will not affect the outcome of the who won or lost because that's just an extra one. That the people who won got correct, so the over was correct with 3. Number 5, combined receiving yards from Adams and Nelson. You set the line at 156. They had 70. Kind of a disappointing game for Jordy Nelson. This is another theme for the Packers that when they play a really good cornerback, they avoid him.
Yeah.
Richard Sherman, now Josh Norman. I think they seem to stay away from the key corners. Number 6, how many tackles would Julius Peppers have? You set the line at 2.5. Mike said the line is 2. And a quick check, I have the same correct. So the unders had that one. Number 7, what will be the Packers score after the first quarter? How many points will they score? Just the Packers. You set the line at 8.5. They had 0, so the under had that one. Then we had a couple of between 7 and 8 questions, which is becoming their own thing. 7.5 was will Hundley get a snap in the game? You said
and he
no,
did.
And I said yes.
So
I got that right. 7.75, will Matthews play? You said no. I said yes.
Oh, bad.
Got
bad.
that one right.
Yeah.
And the tiebreaker was total number of Packer points. Do you remember what you said?
No.
23. Pretty good, right?
Not bad.
You know what I said?
24?
24. And
nice.
Guess who won?
You won again?
Me and Judy.
Oh,
Judy.
my.
Yes.
Oh, boy.
Judy and me are back in
I know.
Judy, yeah, that's so I'm heading there right after the podcast. And,
yeah. Well, I can see why, because you'd be there with Judy.
Yeah,
that's fantastic.
So, Tom, I'll be a perfect gentleman.
As always.
Judy is on a hot streak. That's
she's good. She's very good.
Yeah. She's Tom. Better be careful because I don't remember Tom winning a bunch of these.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
All
right.
Well, we know who's got the football acumen in that marriage.
That's right. Do you want to go through against the Eagles? You ready?
Well, you asked me if I wanted to. I guess I don't have a choice, though, do I?
Yeah. You're contractually obligated to give me lines for the Eagles. Are you ready?
All right.
Number 1, going with the thematic of the last game, the different themes. How many reception yards will Jared Cook have?
Yeah, well, it looks like he's going to be playing 105 this week. I don't think it's going to be quite that much, especially now that there's kind of some film on him. Good defense in Philly, too. I'm going to put his number – I'm going to go 56 this week.
6. I'm going to take the over. I'm long Jared Cook these days.
Okay.
Number 2, how many tackles will Clay Matthews have?
Well, I'm hoping at least – double or maybe triple his output from this past week. But you asked, will Matthews play? You can make an argument that he didn't play. So yeah, really. I could still be right on that.
Well, he did register at least a tackle. So
yeah. So I guess
to say he played.
Technically he played.
Yeah.
I think Clay's gonna have some little better. I feel more confidence in his legs this week. So I'm going to put his number at 4.5.
Oh, 4.5. That's under. I think that's too much. All right,
okay.
So take the under. Number 3, I thought this was interesting because I looked up Carson Wentz is the Philadelphia quarterback rating last week, and it was 61.2. So not very good. So what do you think Carson Wentz's quarterback rating will be this week?
I just like his name.
Yeah, it's a good.
Carson.
Yeah,
It's a good name, and it sounds like a guest on the Ed Sullivan Show.
do you know they call it Wentzylvania? I just heard tonight.
Well, that's really sad. Now, you used to live in Philly, right?
What? Yeah, I did.
I live in Philly. Yeah.
I spent some time with someone from Philly, and we have a Wentzville out here in Missouri, and he laughed at that.
God.
Said that they call it Wentzylvania because of Carson Wentz. So what do you think his quarterback rating will be?
Now, even though his number was low this week, did you see the graphic showing the passer rating against each one of the Packers' defensive backs? Did you happen to see that graphic?
Yeah, it was
like
an
the
average
best
of 130.
one. Yeah, I think Gunter was the best at 112. I mean, Rodgers had a 115 this past week, so it would be against Aaron Rodgers, the best guy. Oh man,
right.
So I think he's going to do better this week. I think I'm going to put him at 94.
All right, I'm taking the over on that one. So I'm going to go back to one that we did this week because you mentioned it. I changed it mid-podcast. Is how many rushing plays will Green Bay have that does not include a quarterback? I was going to say Aaron Rodgers, but now that Hundley is getting some action, I have to say not a quarterback. You think they're going to rush more with Michael?
Yes.
So let's hear it. What do you think?
And congratulations to Huntley for getting some action too. So,
yeah.
And I understand he also played in the game.
His quarterback rating for
2.8.
Yeah, if actually
it was an impressive 2.8.
It was.
Yeah. So without the quarterback carries in there, I do think we're going to see more running this week because I think that's the kind of team McCarthy wants to be. And now he's got a new plaything. He wants to get him out there. I don't think they're going to give him 15 carries, though. It's going to be a little bit like when they had Niall Davis for a bit there.
Which was 3 or 4 carries?
I think he had maybe 4 or 5, something like that. You saw Starks, Montgomery, Ripkowski with a couple. I think we're going to bump it up this week. Did I say 17 last week? Is that what I said?
You said 17 and a half running plays. Yes.
All right, then I'm going to go with the same this week. I think they're going to get there this week.
17 and a half. Okay, I'm going to take the under.
Okay.
On that one. So this was actually, it's the first time this happened. Someone actually suggested a betting line this week. One of our listeners, I think it was Jared Van Cleve.
Who happens to be married to a member of the Packers Therapy medical staff. We want to welcome, Mrs. Dr. Van Cleve onto the medical staff.
And I think they were the ones who were pro-Stanford. They like all the Stanford players like Ty Montgomery and
I believe they went to college there. I think he did for sure, and I think she might have as well.
Well, given that, I guess Zach Ertz went to Stanford, so they wanted to know, as a good betting line, how many receptions will Zach Ertz have? And actually, he already set the line. So
yes, he
did.
It's
already done. He had 6 receptions last week. They've set. Oh, how many? Is it yards or?
He has both. He has both the number of receptions and number of yards. And this is what Jared has. And he set the line at 11.5 catches and 145 yards. So which one of those do you want to go with, yards or catches?
We'll do catches, not yards.
Okay.
111.5 catches. I'm going to take the under.
He's insane.
So we'll see. We'll see.
Jared, you're a hell of an engineer, and your wife is a fantastic physician. 11.5. I think you're high, my friend.
So you can see how hard this is. This isn't an easy task.
Well, he was on the way back from Maui, I think, is where they were. So I'm going to give him a break on that because they're coming back from the islands. It's all feeling good. Yeah. They're Stanford buddy. They want to prop him. I think 11.5 is high, though.
Yeah, I think so. All right, number 6. Speaking of, is it Kristen Michael?
Kristen Michael.
How many rushing yards will Kristen Michael have this week?
Well, that means I'm going to have to think about how many actual carries he will have.
Yep.
And I think it's going to be in the single digits. And he was averaging, I think, 4 yards a carry in Seattle.
Yep.
So
Okay.
I'm going to put his yardage at 35.
35 yards. Interesting. I'm going to take the under. I think it's one more week before he's meaningful. I think that's a little high. Plus, our line is not very good. Um, so
That's true. That's a good point because they were playing Spriggs at right guard, and man, he looks skinny out there.
yeah.
But I guess he held up pretty well.
I
So
think well,
we'll
he's
see.
better than Don Barclay. That's another
Oh,
thing we didn't really talk about is, but they keep Barkley on the team, but every time he plays, he
it's,
stinks.
well, but he got hurt though, so
Yeah. Well, he hurt me.
we may not see him this week. That opens the door for another of those Stanford guys. It's like the Packers have the market cornered on Stanford guys. In fact, I think they have more Stanford guys than Stanford's got.
Yeah, that might be. Number 7, leading tackler this week. Just without looking, can you guess the leading tackler was this week?
I have the stat sheet open, but I don't have it open to that page. So
It rhymes with Hunter.
Ladarius Gunter was
Gunter,
really? Oh my
7
gosh!
tackles. So this one
Oh.
is a. We'll give Mike a break on the numbers. Who do you think the leading tackler will be this week?
Oh boy.
It's not an over/under.
I'm gonna go with. And Martinez got hurt, right?
Yeah, he did.
So he probably won't play because he would be kind of my go-to guy there. Man, who are they gonna play in the middle? Because Ryan's hurt. Those are usually your leading tacklers. I'm gonna go with Morgan Burnett.
Morgan Burnett. All right, I was going to pick him too. I'll do Clinton Dix.
Okay.
I think he'll. I think it's going to be down the field. Unfortunately,
Right.
it's the Eagles.
Right.
So I got my 7.5 and 7.75. 7.5. What do you think Brent Hundley's quarterback rating will be this week?
I'm gonna say 0. I don't think he's gonna play.
All right, 0. I think he does better than 2.8 this week. I think I'm going to take the over on that. So. 7.75. Do they show the 4th and 26 play at any time during the broadcast?
Oh gosh. And they are playing at Philly.
Yeah.
Where that happened.
Where that crime took place.
So it's at any point, and they have to show the
after kickoff. So it's got to be during the game.
It's got to be during the confines of the game.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say no.
All right. So Chris says no.
Because that's 13 years ago now. That's going to be a while.
I think that I would say yes. I think they will. The tiebreaker will be total rushing yards by Green Bay. You want to take a stab at that?
Okay. Now this includes the quarterbacks.
Yeah,
though.
it does.
And so they had 84 this week. I think they'll be a little better. Rodgers is getting, he was a leading rusher last week, 33 yards.
Yeah.
And getting out of the
11-yard
pocket.
Average. Impressive.
Yeah, I know. Well, long as 17, that's not bad.
Yep.
I think they're going to do a little bit. I'm going to put it at 95.
All right, I said 125. I actually went higher than that.
Oh, okay.
Which probably doesn't make sense with some of my picks. They're not consistent. And then I have an extra credit this week.
Oh,
I'm just
okay.
curious and people can participate or not, but this won't go to your score. Maybe if we have a tiebreaker on our tiebreaker we need, then this can count. Who do you think will be the leading rusher for the Packers this week?
Boy, it's Rodgers this week. But you know what? I'm gonna. You know what? I'm gonna go James Starks. I think he's going to. He's not gonna be the starter. I think they'll give more carries, but I think he's going to be able to break a couple around the edge. He's not going to have a lot of yards, but I think he might have 40, 45.
I'm going to hedge my bet. I'm going to say Michael. I think it's possible that he could have under 35 yards and still be the leading rusher. So I'm going to say Michael this week. You can give him a chance. So that's your betting lines, Chris.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say, do you see a blowout? I mean, based just kind of how we're setting these lines and kind of the tenor of our discussion here, are you seeing this another, 15, 20-point blowout?
Yeah, I do. I think the Eagles lost to Seattle. They're at home. I think they have to keep pace with Dallas and Washington. I think that they're not overlooking this game. That's the thing. The Packers stink, but they still are the Packers. So I think everyone brings their A game against them. And Aaron Rodgers is so great, and everyone talks. But they come out and play really hard, and I think they win by. I think Actually, I think it could be closer than, say, against the Redskins, and it might be a little bit better game than against Redskins,
Hmm.
but I think it's still a 10-point plus game. I don't think we're ever in it.
Yeah, I'm looking at 35-20.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think we give up high 30s and we score. It's a night game, probably be cold. I think it's gonna be similar. I think we can score 24 points again. So 35-25 kind of thing. I think that's fair.
Well, let's hope it's a little better game than that. I just there's no reason based on what we've seen the last 4 weeks to think it'll be anything but a game like that. You're playing on the road against a team that's playing well. I can't imagine anybody thinking the Packers are going to win this one, which of course gives a much better chance of the Packers actually winning.
Yeah, they probably will.
Yeah.
That's what we're hoping. They come
Yeah.
out, they score. Michael breaks a few tackles. What happens is the offense gets jazzed up. All of a sudden, the defense comes out with purpose because they've scored and they're up, and we've got this new Michael toy on the team that people are excited about, and it changes the whole sort of feel of the team. That I think is our best case scenario that could happen. I just don't see it happening.
So, if I wanted to participate in these betting lines, how would I do that, Dave?
Well, since I've been winning, I would say don't. But if you insist,
It's not really worth your time even because Dave's going to win again.
yeah, it's just now it's been a number of years, but now I figured it out. I've got my finger on the pulse of this team. But if you care to try to lose,
Is that where your finger is? Okay, I got it. All right.
Well,
That's right. Finger. Yeah.
Mitno Miller, MITNOMILLER @gmail.com. And I think Mike will then send you a link where you can send it directly into Google Docs if you go ahead and play. So he makes it real easy. But your first time and maybe after that, if you feel like it, it's mitnomiller @gmail.com.
You never forget your first time. Play the betting lines. Packers Therapy Hotel and Casino. The winner gets to stay in the sticky floor of the presidential suite at the Packers Therapy Hotel and Casino with the locations on the Strip in Vegas, also in Laughlin, and soon in Reno. So check that out. Now, we did get some correspondence from listeners, apparently shut-ins. I think that's all who listens to this podcast. We have our guy, Patrick Keogh from Ireland is in touch. Barton this week. Richard Durain was in touch with us. With a lot of post-game stuff from Richard, by the way. John P. was out there. He was hyping us, baby, to some people who, like Tyler Dunn, he was sending stuff to us and Tyler Dunn, Bleacher Report. Yeah, it was actually pretty cool. Got a Drunken Packer fan, which could be a lot of different people, but this is this guy's handle on Twitter. In touch with us a couple of times this week. Zach Rapport, or maybe Rapport. Zach in touch with us a couple of times. We appreciate that. Also, our guy Chad, Chad Rudder, draft expert. A lot of people in touch. Also had an email from a member of our legal counsel. This is our barrister friend Tom from the UK.
Tell us to cease and desist. Is that?
No, as a matter of fact, he's he said it's our international attorney. He's been out of action for a while. He's been disbarred in Bermuda, Aruba, Nevis, and now the British Virgin Isles. He told him he knew nothing about the suitcases full of used Canadian dollars that had been FedExed to his yacht from anonymous senders in both St. Louis and Wisconsin, but they didn't believe a word. Damn them. So he's been doing some hard time on our behalf. Tom, we do appreciate the hard work you do on our behalf, handling our international affairs. We're lucky enough to have Tom working the West Coast offensive on our behalf. We have a phalanx of lawyers to go along with our squadron of physicians. We need all the professionals. And now we have a chief of engineering, which is also nice to have Jared helping us out with on the engineering side of things. So we are covered by professionals, no doubt about it. Anyway, Tom, your email gave us both a nice smile. We appreciate it. Good to hear from you. Glad you're still listening to the podcast in the UK. Speaking of the UK, one of our original listeners, John, formerly of Scotland, now living in Northern England, also in touch this week. So good to hear from you, sir, as well. So if you want to be in touch with us, don't hesitate to do so. You can be like John Pinansky, who was in touch with us, John P., and you can write to us at packerstherapy@yahoo.com. In fact, that's also the same email address if you want to go to PayPal and throw us a couple of bucks. We do appreciate that. Still got a few expenses left over from our Packer extravaganza when we watched the Lions at Lambeau Field.
Mostly hotel fines, I think, was the problem.
Mostly. Well, and also too, the bail bondsman does want to get paid for these kind of things. So, by all means, you can send us an email, packerstherapy@yahoo.com, and I will mention one more time before we leave, in a seriousness and in a good thing to do is to go to GoFundMe. And remember Adam Check and his young family he left behind after succumbing to colon cancer. You can go to Adam's Pack is the name of the page on GoFundMe. Since we've been doing this podcast, let me update this, Dave. We did have, when we started this, 81 people, and now it's up to 104 people in 10 hours have given $5,800 toward the $25,000 goal. So a lot of really good response. I would imagine that his family feels very good about the support that's coming from so many people that have enjoyed his writing on the internet about the Packers. So if you want to get a part of that, don't hesitate and go out and do a good thing during the Thanksgiving season in the U.S. We're coming up on Thanksgiving, which means football. On Thanksgiving, the game that interests me, Dave, is the Vikings and Lions. I'm hoping for a blimp disaster that wipes out both teams.
Yeah, then it's just between us and the Bears to
and
win the division.
I think we've got a chance.
Yeah.
We've got a chance.
50,
I think it's a sure thing.
Yeah. 50-50.
Right now, I think the chances of the Packers winning the division far less than 50-50.
Yeah. So hopefully, one team loses and the other has. We play both again, so we control another potential loss for both teams. Who do you cheer for? Any thoughts on what you would cheer for?
I would be more inclined to cheer for the Lions because I hate the Vikings so much.
Yeah. We play Minnesota at home.
Right.
So maybe it's easier for us to beat Minnesota than having to beat Detroit away. I don't know who to cheer for.
Yeah, at this point, I think the Packers are out of it. I really don't think there's going to be any postseason this year. So now I get to settle bloodlust, and I love seeing the Vikings get beat. I mean, that never gets old for me. When they choked that playoff game away last year, that made my postseason right there. To see them. They should have beaten Seattle, and the fact that they didn't and the way they lost it was beautiful.
Yeah, it was just too bad it was Seattle, but yeah, that was pretty great. That was pretty.
Yeah, that was nice. Hey, do you have any pop culture this week? I think I mentioned I've been watching The Crown. This kind of the story of Queen Elizabeth II's rise to become queen in the UK. It's on Netflix. High production values. It's well written, and I'm enjoying watching that series a great deal. So yeah, that's what I've been watching this week on Netflix. What have you got in terms of pop culture?
I don't have a whole lot. I wish I had something more. I do. Anyone who likes video games of a sort. I had a friend over tonight and we played the Vive, which is a virtual reality that I may have mentioned in the past. And I got to tell you, the reaction every time someone uses the Vive and sees virtual reality for the same time, it never walks away disappointed. It's right now we don't have anything other than experiences on the Vive. You kind of go into the ocean, or you are in a Star Wars thing, or there's lots of different sort of free things to download and experience this virtual reality stuff. But if you get a chance, you got to check it out because it is very, very cool. Otherwise I'm just watching the same shows, kind of working through stuff. Thanksgiving's coming up in the U.S., and then I realize I have a fair amount of vacation days, so I'm going to be taking a couple weeks off in December. So I will have lots of time to catch up on pop culture. I'm looking forward to that a lot. So I'll have more to report in a few weeks.
Now, are you taking Friday off? I mean, that's always the big question. Most places of business in the United States will give you Thursday off. That's Thanksgiving.
Yep.
But then some places give you Friday, and some places you got to take the day. What's your plan?
I am taking it. I don't get it for free. I used to like going in on that Friday because no one's in the office and you can kind of leave early, and I would take it as a day to organize my office, really clear stuff out. And I just need a break, so I am taking that off and have another 2 weeks in the office and 2 weeks off, and then start 2017.
Oh, that sounds great. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm gonna take the week off between Christmas and New Year's, and the place where I work pretty much shuts down in January, so I may even take a little more time in January. I don't want to go any place though, but it's just good not to be in the office.
Yeah, and just sleep in. Not that I sleep in anymore, and gotten past the age where sleeping in it works, but just just shutting it down for a couple weeks. I've never actually taken 2 weeks vacation, I think, in my career that I can remember. So I'm sure I'll be on email though and go close to it. But I hope to really take a good 2 week break off, and maybe it'll show my podcast ability. I'll be more on point. I'll remember more things. I'll be more creative. I'll be funnier. Maybe not as funny as you in your Caddyshack.
No.
Which came out in 1980, by the way.
1980. All right.
Yeah,
Okay.
so-
Well, I was pretty close.
Yeah, you were close. I was 11, so
And I was in college, my man.
yeah, we're different.
We certainly are. Yeah.
We are different.
We are indeed, my friend. So anyway, I think that'll pretty much wrap it up. Now the Packers play on Monday, so we will record probably Tuesday next week. So look for something Wednesday morning, probably on a news feed or a podcast feed near you. Hopefully, we'll be talking about a win, but I think we might be talking about a 4-7 Packer team after they play the Eagles on Monday Night Football. I don't really care, actually, because I'm going to be watching the game. I suspect Dave in St. Louis will also be watching the Packers and Eagles game on Monday Night Football. We'll be back talking about it shortly after that game is over. Until that time, I'm Chris.
I'm Dave.
And that's Packers Therapy.
I'm Chris.
And I'm Dave.
And that's Packers Therapy.